sometimes a dose of reality hurts. But look, you can always change it later, right? You can always change your future for yourself. You're in charge. Welcome to Cover Your Assets, your podcast for navigating the financial side of divorce. I'm Josephti and I am here with my co-host, Jade Eagles.
Life doesn't always deal you the best hand, but we're here to help you CYA in every way, because when it comes to your assets, it's all about playing your cards right. Hey Joe, how are you going?
All right. What's up, Jade?
You know, a little bit of this and a little bit of that, so
Okay.
Can't complain.
All right. Are you excited to be used as an example during today's podcast?
When am I not used as an example of what not to do? Yeah, okay. Listen up, listeners. Don't do what I did.
Tell me what not to do in this, what you shouldn't do in this next sentence. Let's see. Let's rush through the divorce, rely on our ex-spouse to deal with all the finances and stay blissfully unaware. Don't negotiate. Have super high expectations. Demand everything you can get because you deserve it.
Well, that seems...
And don't change your standard of living at all.
Yeah, well, I know I didn't do all those, but I think you're touching on...
You can live a more lavish life
Yeah.
post-divorce.
I think what you're getting at is some of those common mistakes, financial mistakes made during a divorce, though.
Maybe.
Yeah.
So we are talking about common financial pitfalls and mistakes that we're going to try to help you avoid.
Minimize.
Yes. So we're going to identify some of these common ones. We're going to give you some examples, tangible examples of people that actually made these mistakes so that, you know, it makes more sense, right?
Yeah.
And hopefully you can identify some of them and say, oh, yeah, my friend did that or my cousin did that and I'm not going to do that. And also talking about seeking professional guidance to help you avoid these missteps in divorce.
Yeah, that is what we're going to touch on there. So obviously, you know, the reason why, the purpose of and, the goal of this episode is, you don't need to become a CDFA like ourselves here to, rectify past mistakes in your divorce.
So really personally, that's why I became a CDFA, because it was like, whoa, I made these crazy mistakes and I'm a financial advisor. I better, help other people make these mistakes. So we're not telling you to become a CDFA, but maybe you might want to hire one for an hour or two, but we'll talk about that later.
Yeah. But once again, learn from our mistakes.
And other people's mistakes.
And
don't make them yourself.
And now that we've, Joe's already a CDFA and, has all this extra additional, education.
Yeah.
Learn from that, so that you don't
Jade's
make that.
Working on that education.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
So that's what we're going to kind of touch on there. So I actually did a little bit of reading. I know you. I know.
You read?
The Queen's English or the King's English, yeah.
How did you spelled today?
Not even going to get. I spelled it the UK way anyway, so which is the correct.
SPELT.
Yeah, that's right. So anyway, UBS. So I was reading this little report or study that they had done back in 2019 that found over 70% of women encountered negative financial surprises when they were getting divorced.
We don't like surprises.
Yeah.
I think that's a big one. Don't be surprised.
And that's a large number. And we're not just talking about, the house that you bought together and not dividing that. That could be one, or the investment account. You got to be thinking bigger picture. How are these decisions are going to affect, the next chapter of your life? Am I going to be able to maintain the same style of lifestyle? Maybe not.
Probably not.
Not initially.
At least temporarily. Yeah.
I think it's something that we see time and time again there that, there are a lot of people who...
Not just women.
That's right. Who, yes, I know. who are making these mistakes. And
being surprised.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. It's not until after they've signed away everything that then someone says, oh, why did you do that?
Or what is this? I didn't realize that.
Yeah.
All right, so let's talk about the first common financial mistake. Jade.
Wait, I'm the common financial mistake. No, I think you're talking about rushing it.
Yes.
Rushing that whole process and not really getting a good clear picture of your finances. Okay.
Why did you rush through your divorce?
I think if you boiled it down, I just wanted it to be done. I wanted that new chapter to begin already. And I trusted that the attorney or that we were working with was or the mediator was going to be advising and looking after for my, best interest there.
Right.
So I was like, okay, cool. Let's get it done. Let's move on. Okay.
Right. So people rush not for the sake of rushing, but would you say this is correct for, at least in your case, you rushed because you were in this unpleasant experience.
Yep.
You wanted to be done with the unpleasant experience.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I just wanted it to be this amicable thing. So I was like, yep, okay, let's agree. I'm trying to do the right thing here. So I'm assuming the same thing's happening back there as well.
Yeah.
We've just been married all this time, so why wouldn't it be?
Right.
So I think that's why I was kind of rushing. And I think that's natural, just to kind of wanting to move on to that next chapter there. I was just making some financial assumptions that were inaccurate though.
So rushing, and actually the opposite of rushing,
is dragging it
out years and years and years and years and years.
You've got a nice little story to share.
Yes, there is someone I know that did drag it out, I believe 4+ years.
How are they dragging it out? For what reasons?
She wasn't ready. She needed to get used to the idea. I think some other things she said was she trusted him and she knew that he still loved her and would take care of her and do this the right way.
Yeah.
Although she did get lots of advice that she actually needed to hire beyond a CDFA. She probably needed to hire a forensic accountant for hidden assets. Dragging it out over 4 years really allowed him the time to carefully hide assets. Look, we'll never prove it because she had all that trust and faith in him. But dragging it out 4 years not only gives time to move things around, it also gives time for both spouses to kind of waste that money that could have been split, right? So just dragging it out, you're still hiring lawyers or mediators or whatever on an hourly basis and not deciding anything. It's not really the way to go either.
And I think to the observer and our group of friends, it was quite clear that he was being very calculating.
Yes.
And taking the, large amounts of gifts to family members or setting up businesses.
And failing them.
Yes. And this is a smart individual.
Yes. And she is too.
They're very smart. And so there's that calculation there. And I think one thing that you maybe missed out on there is I think there was that from that, your friend thinking that they were going to come back, that their ex was going to come back to them.
Yes.
And
that's
that
right.
They love and care for me. The family loves and cares for me. They're going to come back. They just need a bit more space and time.
So I think rushing and dragging out the process, I think that is also an example of your emotions getting in the way of the business transaction at hand, right? So you're rushing because you're in an unpleasant experience and you want to get rid of that unpleasant feeling, or you're dragging it out because perhaps maybe your spouse will change their mind and you won't get divorced, right?
Yeah.
So that's emotional and that's muddying the waters and causing financial issues, right?
Yeah.
And actually, this example is a good way to segue into the next one, being blissfully unaware.
Yeah. So I was working with this client who is very financially savvy. However, they had an agreement in that divorce that she would give up a large Roth IRA account, which is tax-free, for just I think it was either cash or a brokerage account. So not the same, not looking at how the asset is treated in terms of taxes. And it was an equal dollar value. But as you know, there's a huge big difference between taking a $300,000 or $400,000 Roth IRA versus just an investment account or a cash for that.
Well, people might not know. So let's talk about that. So
right.
$100,000 in a Roth IRA, which is already paid for tax wise. So it's $100,000 tax free forever. If it grows to 150 in the Roth IRA and then you withdraw, it's still tax free.
Yeah.
Or you get a taxable account or even a regular IRA, that is also $100,000.
That hasn't had any tax paid on the 401k.
So it's not equal.
Yeah.
It's not equal. So
on top of that, if the ex-spouse is a high income earner, they probably can't even put large amounts into their Roth. Okay. So, that was kind of like a really big windfall for them. And it wasn't highlighted. It wasn't picked up through the attorneys either.
Right.
And it wasn't until I was sitting down on that initial discovery meeting going, tell me.
And you came in after the divorce.
I had come in after the divorce. That's right.
So the higher income earner negotiated to exchange, I guess, in the proceedings to take her Roth IRA for himself.
Yeah.
And he couldn't have created one for himself because he earned too much money.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was her being unaware.
Yeah.
Right. And even though she's financially savvy, she was not aware of that piece of information. Yeah. So especially for our non-CFO spouses, if you are relying on your spouse to be running the finances in the household, you are now going to have your own household. You need to know about your finances right now. Right now. It might be difficult, but you need to figure it out right now. You cannot depend on your soon-to-be ex-spouse still loving you, still taking care of you. No.
Yeah.
You are number one now. You need to take care of yourself and you need to know what's going on.
I think so when I meet with a couple or an individual, I'm always wanting to involve that other spouse because you can see those situations where one of the non-CFO spouse, doesn't really have an active role in those meetings there, which is then just building on that, like they're unaware of what assets they've got, where things are, taxes, potential hidden assets, So it's really important if you do work with or if your soon-to-be ex-spouse does have an advisor, you should be involved in those meetings there.
So I also want to state another example of a friend of ours that got divorced. It was a pretty nasty one, unfortunately, but she was aware, right? So they had a business together, her ex-spouse, and he was really trying to push just like a made-up valuation, like a lower valuation to split between him and her. And she, I think everybody just told her like, hey, just trust it. I'm sure he did fine because he's smart and he calculated it correctly. And she said, no. I want to spend the money on a formal valuation. And the valuation ended up being more than double than what he was trying to push on her.
Jeez.
So in her case, she was aware. And that's what you need to do. And she was not the CFO spouse, but she realized she needed to become one.
Yeah. And that can be taken to like, valuing a property, valuing a business,
just valuing your assets.
Yeah.
And your
certainly, get your own, each you get your own, but maybe like agree on a third party, like, someone neutral there to value it.
Yeah, exactly. Hire a professional to value. If you have a business together, hire some third party to do it. Also, really quickly, just being aware, don't put off financial planning. So look into that. That will also help you figure out like, hey, what's my future going to look like? My immediate future going to look like?
Can I keep on maintaining the same style of life?
Right.
And spending the same amount as beforehand.
Which perfectly segues us to the next pitfall, being unrealistic in both divorce negotiations and your expectations post-divorce.
Yeah. So I'm sure you've got a friend out there. You've seen it definitely on some of your Facebook groups.
Divorce groups, yeah.
Yeah, divorce groups, where people are just coming in with these unrealistic expectations of what they're entitled to.
I'm entitled to this because I gave up my career to stay home with the children. And look, you did.
Yeah.
But it doesn't mean that you get to keep the same lifestyle.
And we've spoken about that before. You really got to separate those emotions from just getting down to the business there and getting through the process.
And really being aware, blissfully aware instead of unaware, that will help you with your negotiations and being realistic on what can I realistically get, for child support, for alimony, if anything.
Yeah.
Right.
Will it? I think there's an opinion and a view that like someone who's been married more than 10 years, they're going to get, support for the rest of their life. That's just not the case.
It's not true anymore.
Yeah.
It's not true.
Yeah.
And it depends on the state also. Yeah. So you need to educate yourself and know that what you can realistically get during negotiations. Just because he screwed you over doesn't mean you're going to keep your lifestyle.
They screwed you over.
Sorry.
Yeah.
I'm not being biased.
But that's a good lesson, like if you're the higher income earner and you're worried that you're going to have to pay for your soon to be ex-spouse, don't worry about that. Hire a professional, get the actual numbers,
Be worried after you crunch the numbers if you're the higher income earner, but don't let your imagination go wild about how you're going to go broke. Cause maybe you'll have like different standard of living afterwards, but there are calculations that go behind these things. So I guess it's on both sides, right?
So let's look at after the divorce.
Post-divorce. So being unrealistic post-divorce and just assuming that you're going to live this lavishly beautiful life now that you've left this marriage that maybe you wanted to leave the marriage. And you're like, yes, I get to live my best life now. And that may be true, but your best life can't be as expensive as it used to be, at least while you're transitioning, right? So don't spend the money you don't have.
Maybe it's now not the time to go get that, brand new car lease that's, pushing on $1,000.
Right. Or that fabulous apartment in that fabulous area that you've always wanted to live in, but you couldn't afford while you're married. But you know what? I'm just going to go for it now.
Getting an interior designer in to help, decorate it.
Right. So just going back to prior episodes, figure out what you make from your paycheck and stay within those boundaries, right? Do not spend beyond that. Even if you get this settlement and you're like, oh God, I got all this money now. Yes. No.
It's got to last a period of time. Yeah. It's not just like, it's not going to keep. This is
your retirement. This is your future retirement. This is, this is not to spend in the next year to live your fabulous life now that you're out of this marriage.
You're probably giving up another asset or some part of an asset maybe.
Right.
Or ownership in an asset.
I mean, the reality is huge percentage of people that get divorced have to adjust their lifestyle downwards, at least for a couple of years.
Yeah.
Right.
We've all heard about Joe jumping houses, multiple times.
Hopscotching and Goldilocksing homes, right? As I figured out how much I could, how much I could afford to live and really,
Yeah, look, I'm sure there's cases out there where someone has been able to improve their lifestyle. Maybe they're frugal or something like that. But I think for the majority of people, it's a change of expectations and downwards. What you have to do.
And again, it's a transition. Yeah. It's a transition. Accept and be realistic that your lifestyle right after divorce is going to be different and less instead of more.
Yeah. So we've just kind of spoken about don't put off financial planning too, which kind of then transitions to our last point that we want to drive home.
Don't be in denial, right? You got to do that financial planning so that you could see what you can afford, right? Yeah. So if you can't figure it out yourself, like you're not sure what you make after, and this is okay. Like you're not sure what you earn versus what you can spend, hire someone.
Yeah. Okay? Yeah. Seek that professional guidance so that you can make sure that, you've got a clear picture and that you can help avoid these mistakes as well.
Right. So even if you're going to do it yourself, like do Hello Divorce, you're like, this is simple, cut and dry. I'm going to do it myself. You can still hire a CDFA for an hour and just launch your questions for an hour. Just be very prepared and you could be efficient.
Yeah.
I mean, I did that with a consulting attorney. So I went through mediation, but I did hire a consulting attorney and I peppered her with questions and kept it under 70 minutes. And there was no hello, no small talk because you pay for that minute when you're saying hello. So I just launched into my questions.
And look, we're always going to seek advice and guidance from friends and family, but sometimes they're not the best people to be giving that advice. So if you're working, or you should probably be seeking a professional's help and guidance through this. And if these professionals are telling you something
that you don't want to hear,
you need to stop and listen because they're telling you it for a reason. It's most likely backed up with numbers with no emotion attached to it.
Yeah. And you know what? If you don't trust it, you're like, this attorney's not looking out for my best interest. That's fine. Seek a second opinion. And if it's the same numbers, then maybe you need to listen and stop getting second opinions, right?
Swallow your pride and just.
And I understand sometimes people hire the wrong lawyer, wrong personality, someone they feel like is not looking out for their best interest. Cut the losses and move on to somebody else. But if you get the same advice delivered in a different way,
listen.
You got to listen. Yeah. So if they tell you that you're going to have to move out of your big house because you're just not going to get that kind of alimony and child support, that's backed up by a formula based on your state laws.
Yeah.
Right. So it's sometimes a dose of reality hurts, but look, you can always change it later, right? You can always change your future for yourself. You're in charge.
Yep.
It's time for divorce, this or that.
What question do we have from our producer there?
All right. He said, speaking of downsizing and, transitioning post-divorce.
Making cuts,
divorce, this or that. Give up either the perfect neighborhood bubble that we live in right now or travel. And again, this is temporary because post-divorce, your situation is temporary. It is what you make of it. So divorce this or that temporarily.
I'm just going to wait for you to finish before I jump in there. So I already know my answer there. That's
okay, go.
I would get rid of the perfect little bubble.
So you would be
divorced,
homeless and travel?
No, I have multiple homes because I'm traveling.
Multiple homes.
Yeah.
Wow.
I can Airbnb. I might couch surf, or
wow, that sounds luxurious.
I might buy a little place over in Italy. You can buy a house for $1, they say. So I would pick travel in a heartbeat because as long as I have a strong internet connection, I can work different places.
But how about your child who is going to school? Ooh. Or are we living in reality or fantasy here? Are we blissfully unaware, Jade?
Well, I could still have. I could pick somewhere else. I could downsize for a period of time, like get like an apartment somewhere else. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So that you could travel.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay.
Travel more. Yeah.
Travel more than you did?
Yes. So that's what I would get rid of. What about you?
I think we're going to need to do some financial planning, Jade. Anyway.
What would you then? So, right, same question. Yep.
What I did do was I kept my bubble. I kept my neighborhood bubble, but I did downsize within the bubble to a cheaper home. And there were no vacations for about 3 years. None. Maybe I think there were like weekend driving vacations, cheap hotel, but certainly no airplanes, no resorts, nothing like that for years.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I picked my comfortable home. But I am a Taurus, so Taurians love their home and being comfortable.
Yeah. And look, you love your little bubble as well. So
I do love my bubble.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
like all the amenities that you need.
Yes.
Yeah. On this episode, we talk about the financial, common mistakes to avoid during a divorce. Yeah. Yes. So we touched on identifying and avoiding those common financial pitfalls in the divorce proceedings. We just touched on a couple of them there, didn't we?
Like rushing, being blissfully unaware, and being unrealistic in your expectations.
Yeah. We also spoke about
give you some examples.
Examples, learning from ours and our people that around us mistakes. And then also just really seeking that professional, support and guidance. Yeah.
To make sure that you avoid those pitfalls and to make sure that you've turned every stone. I'm Josephti.
And I'm Jade. Yeah, thanks for joining us, and we'll talk to you in a couple of weeks.
All right, great. Thank you for listening to this week's episode of Cover Your Assets with your hosts, Josephti Cruz and Jade Eagles. Jade and Jo are advisors of the Wealth Garden FS, an SEC registered investment advisor. The information is general and educational in nature and should not be considered financial, tax, or legal advice. It is not intended to serve as a substitute for personalized advice or as a recommendation or solicitation of any particular security, strategy, or investment product. Please consult with a qualified professional about your individual situation.
Advisory services are only offered to clients or prospective clients where the Wealth Garden Financial Services and its representatives are properly licensed or exempt from licensure. No advice may be rendered by the Wealth Garden Financial Services unless a client service agreement is in place.